Howdy, this is Jonathan Scott. Welcome to John's D&D Vlog, episode number 35. I finally am getting around to this one. Chainmail. We're going to talk about Chainmail for the third time. Even with 3 episodes, though, I don't think I'm going to be able to cover it all, but hopefully these 3 episodes will be enough to help you understand this game well enough so that you can figure out the rest on your own. Don't forget, this book is available as a PDF from drivethrurpg.com, so to play the game, you aren't going to have to spend an arm and a leg anymore. The last time I checked, the price was just $5, so go ahead, have fun. Before I continue, I want to talk a little about its creators. When it comes to D&D, Gary Gygax tends to be the one to get most of the credit, and it seems that he did the bull's share of the work, so perhaps the credit is deserved. Dave Arneson, though, should be credited as the actual father of D&D. It was his core ideas that Gary took and then developed into the game that we all played in the 70s and 80s and then even on to today. There's one more person, though, whose efforts should be mentioned in this episode. Jeff Perrin. He was the co-author of Chainmail, right along with Gary Gygax. As we've been discussing in the last 2 episodes, Dave Arneson used the rules for Chainmail in his own game, Blackmore, to run his combats to begin with. It was a fundamental part of D&D at its early stages. Jeff Perrin was co-designer of that. So in effect, this makes Jeff Perrin another father of D&D, on par with other early contributors such as Tim Kask. So because his efforts were so essential in D&D's early stages, he deserves some kudos. So thanks, Jeff, for your help. We appreciate what you did for us. You helped us all to have a lot of fun. Before I go on, I'd like to make up for a mistake I made in previous episodes. At various times, I suggested in my videos that Dave Arneson was the actual creator of role-playing games. All of these episodes, though, were created before I made episode number 40, my episode on D&D history. It wasn't until that episode that I did a serious study into how D&D came into being. In fact, the real creator of role-playing games wasn't Dave Arneson. It was another man named Major David Wesley. If you'd like more information on this, please check out episode number 40. P.S. Some suggest that the creator of role-playing games wasn't actually Major Wesley. They want to attribute it to somebody else. My only comment on this is that Major Wesley and his Brownstein campaigns were mentioned in each of the books I studied on D&D history as the point in time when players were put in charge of a single character and not an entire army. Each book said this, each and every one of them. This was when the change occurred and role-playing games were invented, and Major David Wesley was the one behind all of that. So let's let the debate end already. He's the guy who did it, so give him the praise he deserves. Anyway, on to the game. Here's what I've discussed so far. Today I'm going to try and go over all the rest of this, though. With any luck, I'll be able to finish it all up by the end of this episode. First, let's talk about DM's rule number 1. And this is Chainmail. There's no DM, but it still seems to apply. I'm going to read part of the second paragraph on page 8. Although the rules have been thoroughly play-tested over a period of many months, it's likely that you will eventually find some part that seems ambiguous, unanswered, or unsatisfactory. When such a situation arises, settle it among yourselves, record the decision in the rules book, and abide by it from then on. These rules may be treated as guidelines around which you form a game that suits you. It's always a good idea to amend the rules to allow for historical precedence or common sense. Follow the spirit of the rules rather than the letter. Gary had a similar attitude about Dungeons & Dragons. Everything is optional, so enjoy the freedom and don't be afraid to change things if it makes for a better game between you and your friends. Let's talk about artillery. So, before I can do this, though, you're going to have to take a trip to your local hardware store and get ready to do some arts and crafts. This thing is called a variation measure, and you're going to need one if you plan to have cannons in your battles. Here's how you make one. I changed the design a little from what's in the book. In the book, they suggested that you use dowel rods, those long, round wooden sticks, right? I personally prefer these. Here in Japan, they're pretty cheap to get. People use them in gardening. I also use this clip so the length can be adjusted for the different ranges of your artillery. I'm just going to show it to you and hopefully you'll be able to figure out how to make one on your own. You need the main shaft, but then at the end you're going to need the 6-inch long horizontal variation bar. The details for creating one is on pages 13 and 14 of your manual. When you're done with that, you're still not done. You're going to need your bounce guides. The instructions for these are on page 14. When you shoot a cannonball, it's going to bounce. It doesn't just take out everything in a straight row. It hits people, then bounces in the air, hits people, bounces in the air. And during these bounces, it's going to fly over the heads of some of your enemy troops. So not all the troops in the path of the projectile are going to be hit. When you fire a cannon, you have to declare whether you're shooting long or short range. Once you've declared this, the referee will use these bounce guides to determine who is actually hit by the projectile. You have to declare whether or not you're shooting long or short range before he lays the bounce guides down. If you declare short range, only the troops in these white areas are affected. If you declare long range, only the troops in these black areas are affected. Lastly, the referee might have his hands full using this thing, and the terrain below it might not be the easiest to place the rod over. So in order to do this in a hands-free sort of way, I went to the dollar store and bought these cheapo camera tripods. On top of each, I just placed this strange-shaped washer. Using 2 of these tripods, you should be able to put your variation balance anywhere pretty easily. So anyway, I'm not great with a glue gun, but basically you're making a little thing for your rods to rest on. And like I said, I'm not great with a glue gun. When this thing dries, I'll cut off the excess glue. Anyway, this is what it looks like when it's done. So it's got that bottom divot there that the pole will rest in, and the whole thing has just been coated in with a glue gun there. I've got those 2 little blobs up on top. The plastic is not porous, the metal is not porous, so somehow this thing's got to have something to hold on to the top washer with. So I continued those blobs of glue all the way up on top. So that's the thing that's going to actually do the keeping in of the top washer. So anyway, I got 2 of them, and then I'll just lay the pole between them. Let's see how you use the variation measure. If you go into your book, in the man-to-man rules, it has a way for you to figure out how to do a fair fight between 2 different sides. It gives each unit on the board a certain point value, right? And the whole idea is you just put up enough points on one side and a similar amount of points on the other, and it should be a fair fight. I don't have miniatures for this, so I just drew up these little things here. It's for a light field gun. And these are going to be the cannons that are going to be shooting at these 28 heavy horse. So we've got 2 light field guns, 15 points each, 30 points, and then you need 4 guys to man them. And then this thing right here is called a mantlet. It's a big screen that your forces can hide behind that will protect them from archers. There's no archers over here, but I just wanted to try them. And then there are archers back here. There's 20 light foot archers. And let's just see how it goes. The 28 heavy horse and these guys. So these guys have a shooting range of 15 inches. And that's this darker line going right down in the middle. So once the heavy horse cross that line, these archers can attack them. The dotted line here represents the range of the light field guns. What we're going to do is do everything simultaneous. So everybody's going to move to begin with. And my heavy horse, they can't do anything back there. So the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to move their 12 inches. So they've moved. This puts them in the range of the light field guns. These guys are not going to move. Okay, now we're going to do artillery and missiles. They're too far away, so the archers can't attack, but the light field guns can. So they're going to shoot. So here's my equipment. And they're both going to shoot straight ahead. So I put this at my maximum range. Even though I'm not shooting that far, even though I'm shooting at a closer distance, I still put this at my maximum range. And I make sure this is lined up with the front of my guns. And these guys are going to be attacking the center of the pack. So now we're going to roll to see if the trajectory veers off at all. 1, which means it's going to go way over here to the side. Right about there. So then I have to move my trajectory over because that's how far I missed. Right? And now I take this away and I bring in my bounce rod. And before I put this down, I have to say long or short. And I would have said probably short because these guys have come in so far. So I have to say long or short before I put this thing down. So I said short. I'll line this up so it's at the front of my cannon. And I said short, so that means that everything that's in these white areas is what gets hit. And as you can see, I completely made a mistake. All of these guys are in the black area, so nobody gets hurt. I should have said long range. So that was my first mistake. Now let's try it again with this other gun. We're going to do something similar, but I'm not going to make the same mistake this time. We're going to shoot again at the middle of the pack. That was a very expensive mistake. Okay, I'm going to roll another 6-sider, and I got a 6, so which means I'm going to veer off in a completely different direction there. So it's over there. So we'll move this over here, and this time I'm going to say long range, right? Like I should have done the first time. And everything under that black area, everything that touches that black area gets taken out. So you have to get a bird's eye view here. And it's just these 4 that are going to go away. So that's the end of the artillery and missiles. These guys don't have any artillery and missiles, and these guys just have arrows and then the light guns. Now these guys have shot, which means they don't get to shoot again next turn. They have to wait 1 turn before they can shoot again. So next turn they won't get to shoot. Now we have to do an instability due to excess casualties morale check. This id deck check. So these guys lost 4 guys, but I only have to check it when they lose half. And they haven't lost half yet, so I'm not going to check it. And they're not close enough to do any melee, so that's the end of it. That's the end of the first round. So now it's round number 2. We move on to round 2. So we start at the basic turn sequence again, and we're going to do everything simultaneously again, right? So first we're all going to move. It's 18 inches from the first heavy horse to the light field guns. And these guys aren't going to be attacking the light field guns. They want to attack the light foot that are running the light field guns. So they can't do a charge. A charge wouldn't do them any good. It would just put them in front of the guns. They need to get behind the guns and to the side of the guns. That's where they're going to be able to get to the light foot. So they're not going to do a charge this time. Instead, they're just going to do a normal move. And they're going to go 12 inches. 3, 6... Okay, they've moved their 12 inches, and that's all they can do. They're trying to get to the fight, right? Oh, there is actually one more move. These guys are going to move their mantlets here, and these guys are going to work on the cannons. They're going to reload. Now the 8 light foot are here reloading the cannons, so I'll be able to use them next turn, but I can't use them this turn. The heavy horse, though, have come close enough so that the archers behind them can attack. So according to the book, 20 are firing on fully armor figures. So I have to roll 1d6. If I roll a 1 to 4, 3 of these guys die. If I roll a 5 or a 6, 3 of these guys die. Which means 3 of these guys die. That's the end of it. Okay, so now these guys are down to, what is that? 21. There's 21 heavy horse left out of 28. I don't have to do an id deck check until it gets to 14. And I don't have to do a post-melee morale check because there hasn't been any melee. So this is the end of the round. Now we're going to go to round 3. Okay, and then the first thing we're going to do is a simultaneous move again. So here we go. So the Lightfoot have finished loading the cannon and they've moved their mantlets off to the side so the field guns can shoot. But we're moving first, so that means that these guys get to move. And they can go up to 12 inches. Okay, I forgot to do something last round. If the archers aren't moving, they get to attack twice. So I took out another 3 of them. So anyway, the movements are all done. And what you can see here is that the heavy horse have completely surrounded all the Lightfoot. But that's just the move. We still have to go through missiles, then we go through melee. We don't have to check for IdTech, the instability due to excess casualties. We don't have to do that until the heavy horse has lost 14. Right now they're at 18, so if they lose 4 more, I have to do that check. Now, we're going to do the missiles. The archers aren't going to be engaging in the melee. All they're going to do is shoot, and they get to shoot twice, which means 6 of these guys are going to go away. And this all happens before melee. Okay, so that's the missiles, and the light field guns would love to shoot, but the heavy horse have all made it behind them, so there's nothing they can do to shoot. They're allowed to turn up to 45 degrees either way, but the heavy horse are behind them. There's nothing that the light field guns can do to be helpful. Now, the heavy horse have lost a lot, so it's time to do the instability due to excess casualties check. For them to stay, I have to roll a 6 or better on 2 6-sided dice. So here we go. If I roll a 6 or better, they remain and they fight. And then we do melee. And these guys will probably destroy all the Lightfoot on the first round in melee. So we'll see what happens. I got a 5. According to the book anyway, the heavy horse run away. They disappear, and then that's the end of the fight. The light field guns and the artillery killed enough of the heavy horse so that the heavy horse that remained did run away. And then that's the end of the fight. So anyway, the battle's done. Let's talk about how I did. I made one big mistake. I measured the 30-inch range of my light field guns from the front of the guns all the way to this dashed line way over here. And that's fine. But when I measured the range for my archers, I measured it from the same point. But as you can see, the archers are actually 3 inches behind there. So instead of the 15-inch range ending here, it should have actually ended here. So that was my mistake, but when the heavy horse actually came into the archer's range, they passed this point too, so that mistake didn't actually have any kind of an effect on the battle. So it all worked out just fine. Secondly, what may have happened is that my heavy horse, some of them actually went all the way through the line, and from like here to here, they had 12 inches they could go, but in order for them to get around like this, it was actually probably going to be more than 12 inches. When I was doing it, I was thinking that they would actually just go through the troops. I mean, in a normal battle, movement and melee occur at the same time, especially with horses, right? But according to chainmail rules, movement happens first, and then eventually you get around to melee. So because these guys are in the way, the horse would have actually had to go around them. Anyway, I just ruled that they could go through them. That's how they were able to get back here. And it was probably more than their 12 inches, but I just let it happen. Another referee might choose something different, but that's what I'm going to let happen. Third mistake was actually a big one, but it didn't have an effect on the game. I forgot to keep track of fatigue. But the heavy horse were the only ones who were actually generating fatigue. They were the only ones whose fatigue was increasing at a rate of 20% every turn, so after 3 turns, they only would have been to 60% and they wouldn't have been impaired. Nevertheless, I did forget to do it. One more thing is, this equipment's new to me, and what I ended up noticing is when you're in the middle of a battle, you got a million things to think about. So when you're dealing with equipment, sometimes if you get a little bit flustered or too frustrated or something, you're going to make mistakes. So what I did was I put the 2 tripods way too close to each other, and it didn't do a very good job of balancing this stuff at all. I mean, it's going to tip, right? So it's just something I have to get used to. You have to make sure that you put the tripods actually pretty far apart from one another, and then they'll work a lot better. That's just something I'm going to have to learn. Other than that, I think the battle went okay. If you believe that I made any mistakes, please write about it in the comments. So let's move on. Next, we're going to be talking about bombards. A bombard is basically just a bomb. There's an example of the use of a bombard in the book on page 14. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Here's what the example would actually look like. You'll have to judge for yourself if this is how you want it to happen in your own game, though. So a heavy field gun, also known as a cannon, shoots a bombard at an advancing enemy pike square. The enemy is 26 inches away, and the square of enemies is 8 inches deep. This is what happens according to the example in the book. The player chooses short range and rolls a 4 for his trajectory roll. Because of the 4, the shot is on target. It doesn't veer off to the left or the right. Then, on the bounce guide, only the troops in the white areas are affected, because the player chose short range, but only for the last 3.5-inch diameter circle of the white areas. And this is where things get strange. According to the book anyway, all of the third light area, 1 inch, and then 3 inches of the second area are affected. So apparently, according to chainmail rules, the explosion itself is split up according to this bounce guide, and that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. But that's what it is according to the rule book, so you'll have to choose what you want to do yourselves. So I'm going to talk to you about catapults now, except that to kill several birds with one stone and to save time, I'm just going to explain catapults to you by actually talking about giants instead. In the rulebook, it says that giants can be treated as small catapults, so we'll go over the fantasy supplement at the same time as I go over catapults. I'm sorry, but I don't want this video to be that long. Anyway, in the man-to-man rules, we learned how to make fair battles by counting up the number of value points for each troop in your army and then making sure that the other army, your opponent's army, has a similar number of points. In the fantasy supplement, all the fantastic creatures there also have these value points. So to begin, let's have a battle between two giants. 100 points, 50 points each, and archers. So that's 20 Lightfoot, 1 point each, and they'll all have bows, which are 4 points each. So that's a total of 100 points for each side. Now, unfortunately, I'm not completely sure what to do here now. The writing in the book is just not clear. It wasn't written well enough. It says that the giants can throw missiles, rocks, just as a small catapult, and then it says the words 20 inches without really explaining what the 20 inches refers to. Does it refer to the movement of the giants or to the throwing range of the giants? Because the book does not mention a movement rate anywhere else for them, I'm going to assume that the 20 inches refers to the giants' movement rate. This means that the giants will throw rocks exactly as small catapults do. This means that the range of their rock throwing is 30 inches. There's one more point of ambiguity as well. It says the giants defend as 12 armored foot, and that it takes a number of cumulative hits, enough to destroy 12 armored foot, to kill them. The word cumulative, to me, suggests that the giants have, in effect, 12 hit points. They need to be hit 12 times before they're killed. As you may have noticed through these battles, no hit points are ever kept track of for any of your troops. Any hit kills. This, in D&D speak, suggests that each of the troops that we've seen so far have just had 1 hit point each. All the way from the Lightfoot to the Heavy Horse. Just 1 hit point each. And the giants have 12, or at least this is what the word cumulative suggests to me. I mentioned this to a groundyard once, and he told me that I was wrong. He didn't go into enough detail for me personally, but the idea I believed he was suggesting was that in order to kill a giant, the giant has to take 12 hits in one damage-dealing event. This means that a bunch of troops would have to be gathered around the giants. Enough troops so that after all the dice are rolled in one throw of the dice, 12 hits would have to occur. And if 12 hits do not occur, the giant is fine and untouched. Unhurt, unwounded, unscathed. This seems a little stupid to me, so thanks to DM's rule number 1, I'm just going to ignore him. P.S. The whole idea of something either being killed or being untouched with no middle ground whatsoever, I refer to as binary life. It's either dead or alive with nothing in the middle. You've probably seen something similar to this in another game that's pretty popular nowadays, Magic the Gathering. Magic isn't completely binary, though. Damage is counted up throughout the turn. There is a cumulative aspect to it. The thing that makes it more binary than D&D, though, is that at the end of each turn, all creatures heal and are completely fine to fight the next round with no negatives, no matter how much they were wounded the rounds previous. Binary life. It isn't very realistic, but it does make games simpler. So let's proceed, but with the caveat that I might be doing it wrong. If you are a growneyard who knows these rules better than I do, please add your wisdom to the comments. Thank you. One more thing. In D&D terms, if men have only 1 hit point, meaning 1 hit die, and the giants have 12 hit points or 12 hit dice, this suggests that the giants here are actually cloud giants. Those are the giants in the monster manual that have 12 hit dice. Well, anyway, I guess that's enough prep. Let's move on to the battle. So this is the fight I was telling you about, and supposedly it's going to be a fair fight. You've got the 20 longbowmen over here, and you've got two giants over here, and let's just see what happens. Okay, it's going to be simultaneous movement again, which means usually in a battle there'll be your referee, right? And both of you issue your orders to your troops by writing orders on a little card and giving them to the referee, and then the referee's the one who does all the movement. But it's just me in here by myself, so we'll do what I can do. I want to get to the action right away. The giants have a movement range of 20 inches, And the archers, if they move, they only get to shoot once. So for the sake of expediency and because the giants feel no fear, I mean, their morale is perfect, the giants are going to run straight into the longbowmen, which means the longbowmen are going to get to fire twice. So let's just get moving here. Oh, by the way, these boxes, I guess you can't really see them, but the boxes behind the giants, that's where I'm going to keep track of the giants' hit points. And actually, I think I'm going to draw a new set of boxes right around here once I finish moving them. I'll move this over just a little bit. So, like I forgot to do last time, I forgot to keep track of fatigue, so I guess I'm going to do that this time. The giants have moved. It's not a charge. I couldn't find any data about how far a giant charge was, so I'm just assuming it's just a normal movement. And when you do a normal movement, you lose 20% of your fatigue max. So that's the movement. The archers, they want to shoot twice. And the giants have moved. Because they moved, they can't throw rocks this turn. So they kind of sacrificed it a little bit just to get in close fast. So here we go. We've finished with the move, and now we're going to do artillery and missiles. These guys could have shot, except that they moved. Because they moved, they can't shoot. These guys can shoot, all right? These guys defend as armored foot. I moved the camera over so it's hard to see that. So they're going to defend as fully armored figures, even though they're basically naked. The giants are. But according to the book, they defend as armored foot. I've got 20 archers shooting fully armored figures. So if I roll a 1 to 4, they take 3 hits. And if I roll a 5 or a 6, they take 3 hits. Which means they're going to take 3 hits. But it's a total of 3 hits, right? So I can't give 3 and 3. I have to give just 3 to 1. So being smart archers, they want to get rid of threats. They don't want to spread the damage out evenly. They want to get rid of threats. So they're going to focus all their fire on the bigger guy. So at the end of the missiles, if these guys haven't moved, then they get to shoot again, which means another 3 hits. There's no id deck check here because these guys have perfect morale. If one of them dies, the other one just doesn't care. And these guys haven't lost any, so they're not going to have to do an id deck check, right? Okay, so that appears to be the end of the round. And they're not close enough to do melee, so we're just going to skip on to the next round. So here we go, round 2. Okay, now everybody is in range of everyone else. The archers can shoot up to 15 inches away. 3, 6, 9, 12, yeah. So everybody can shoot at everyone else. So it's all going to happen simultaneously. In this one turn, the archers are going to take out this one giant. Because they haven't moved, they get to shoot twice, which means they do three hits. But then because they didn't move, they get to do another 3 hits. But because all the missiles and the artillery are happening simultaneously, even though he's going to die this turn, he still gets to hit. Now the way this is supposed to happen is I declare the range. And so for this particular range, I'm going to say that he's going to shoot 10.5 inches. Because I can see on the table that they're 10.5 inches away. So they're both going to throw 10.5 inches away and a little bit into the center. And then what you do is you take one of these things and you put it on top of the target. And everything that falls within the circle are the ones that die. I said 10.5 inches, so I'm just going to use this. Ten and a half inches falls right about there. So with this one shot, this one giant takes out 10 of these troops. Okay, now the other giant's going to go, and he said the same thing. He's going to throw his stone 10.5 inches away. And it says that anything that circle that gets within that 2-inch diameter is destroyed. And that took out the other 10. So the battle's over. And all that's left standing is one giant. So let's look back at the battle a little bit and see how maybe things could have gone better. First of all, this surface has all these lines written on it, and that made my job a little bit too easy. It's like with the bounce rod when you're using cannons. The general should have to guess. He shouldn't be able to go out to the battlefield and like put down a measuring tape and figure anything out. He should have to just guess. The bounce rod makes you guess, and with catapults there should be something there that makes you guess too, which means these lines on the table make life too easy. So you should have a different surface. Also, with cannons, you've got this variation bar that adds an aspect of randomness to it, left or right, seeing how far the shot veers off of your target. But when you're doing catapults, there's no left or right variations around. In the book, they did mention one optional rule, though, which involved 2 dice of different colors. It's on page 13 of the book under the title Fire Optional. 1 die is for when the stone goes too far, in this instance green. The other is for when it goes too short, in this instance white. Whichever die is bigger is the one you use. If the dice are the same, then your stone lands at the exact range that you stated. The book also spoke about triangulation. I didn't do it, but that would also add another element of randomness to your experience, left and right randomness. Please read about that on page 13 also. Looking back on this scenario, it would have made it a much fairer fight had I included both of these rules. In both of these instances, though, it's pretty important that you make your players guess. The guessing is a pretty important part of the game. Also, what happens when one of these giants becomes fatigued? The obvious answer is, in melee he acts as 12 heavy foot, and when you're fatigued you fight at 1 lower level, so instead of being heavy foot, he would become light foot. They'd begin fighting as 12 light foot. So the book doesn't really spell that out specifically anywhere, but it is something you should actually just be able to figure out on your own. Other than that, I thought the battle went pretty well. It was a good explanation of how to use a catapult, even though we did use it in the form of a giant. Anyway, now that you know something about artillery, let's talk about sieges. In Chainmail, structures have hit points. In the book, they refer to the structure's hit point total as simply its point total. You can read up on it on page 22 of your book. Each different sort of artillery, though, can do a different amount of damage to a structure. Each time damage is given, the running total has to be kept track of. Once that portion of the structure is out of points, there's a breach, and your troops may enter into the structure. The data for breaches is on page 24 of your book. I'd like to say more about this, but I have no personal experience to lean on. Your walls have hit points, and when the hit points are gone, the enemy can enter. It's easy enough to understand. I'm sure it's something much more difficult in practice, though. I think I'm done talking about Chainmail. There's actually a lot more about it that needs to be said. Really, all I have done is just to scratch the surface. If this has intrigued you, you might want to find yourself a few friends who have similar interests and have an actual game or two. Please feel free to tell us how it all went in the comments here. I, myself, am not a war gamer. I did all of this just to help people better understand where D&D came from. I hope it was helpful. Anyway, have good games, have a lot of fun, have a good day.